take a deep breath, and let's hear a story about Clara, who turned mistakes into magic. Clara Matthews was always a whirlwind of movement and chaos in the quiet town of Meadowbrook. Her chestnut curls bounced wildly as she rushed from place to place, always 5 minutes behind schedule. Her bedroom was a colorful explosion of half-finished projects, books with dog-eared pages, and clothes that never quite made it to the hamper. The soft morning light would filter through her curtains, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air above her collection of mismatched treasures. At school, Clara's reputation preceded her like an affectionate shadow. Hurricane Clara, some teachers would mutter with a mix of exasperation and fondness as she scrambled into class after the bell. The smooth, cool surface of her desk was never without a constellation of pencil marks, doodles filling the margins of her notebooks like wildflowers. The gentle hum of classroom activity would momentarily pause whenever she entered, her presence changing the rhythm of the room. What Clara lacked in coordination, she made up for with her imagination that seemed to flow endlessly like a spring brook. Her mind was a garden where ideas bloomed in vibrant colors, their fragrances mingling in unexpected combinations. During lunch breaks, she would sit under the old oak tree, its leaves creating a dappled pattern of shadows on her sketchbook as she filled page after page with drawings of fantastic worlds and curious creatures. Mrs. Winters, the art teacher, was perhaps the only person who saw beyond Clara's clumsiness to the creativity that lay beneath. In the art room, with its comforting smell of clay and paint, Clara felt her shoulders relax, her breathing slow. The sound of brushes swishing in water jars and the soft scratching of charcoal on paper created a soothing melody that calmed her typically racing thoughts. Clara's parents, though loving, had grown weary of the trail of minor disasters that followed their daughter. "Clara, dear, you need to be more careful," her mother would sigh, the evening sunlight casting long shadows across the kitchen floor as they cleaned up yet another spilled drink. The smooth wooden table beneath Clara's fingertips would bear witness to her whispered apologies as she helped mop up the mess. At 15, Clara had grown accustomed to the gentle chorus of disappointment that seemed to follow her everywhere. "You'll never get it right," was a phrase she'd heard so often it had become a lullaby, the rhythm of those words sinking into her bones like a familiar ache. At night, she would lie in bed, the cool sheets against her skin, a contrast to the warm embarrassment of the day's mishaps. The walls of Meadowbrook High School were adorned with posters announcing the upcoming spring fair, an annual tradition that brought the entire community together. The excitement was palpable in the hallways, creating a gentle buzz of anticipation that floated through the air like the scent of fresh flowers. Clara would trace the colorful letters on the posters with her fingertips, imagining what it would be like to be an important part of something so beloved. Ms. Rodriguez, the enthusiastic Spanish teacher in charge of the fair committee, had converted her classroom into planning headquarters. The room was transformed into a hub of activity, the tables covered with spreadsheets and timelines, the soft scratching of pencils on paper, a constant backdrop. The scent of cinnamon from Ms. Rodriguez's ever-present tea created a warm, inviting atmosphere that made everyone feel welcome. Clara would linger outside the door after school, watching the committee members work with a sense of longing that settled in her chest like a small, warm stone. The sound of their laughter and excited conversations floated out into the hallway, wrapping around her like a melody she couldn't quite join. The cool metal of the lockers against her back grounded her as she observed from a distance. One Tuesday afternoon, as golden light streamed through the windows, creating pools of warmth on the school floors, Clara finally gathered her courage. Her heart beat a rhythm against her ribs as she stepped into Mai's. Rodriguez's classroom, the familiar scent of chalk dust and old books enveloping her like a comforting blanket. The room fell quiet as heads turned in her direction. "I'd like to help with the fair," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper, like the gentle rustling of leaves in a summer breeze. Miss Rodriguez's smile spread across her face like sunshine, warm and welcoming. The tension in Clara's shoulders began to melt away as she was invited to join a table where students were designing posters. The sensation of belonging was new to Clara, unfamiliar yet pleasant, like the first warm day after a long winter. The soft murmur of voices around her, the occasional burst of laughter, and the contented sighs of focused work created a symphony that made her feel part of something bigger than herself. As she sketched ideas for posters, her usual anxiety began to fade like morning mist under the sun. "These designs are wonderful, Clara," Ms. Rodriguez said, her voice warm like honey tea on a cold day. The praise settled over Clara like a soft blanket, unexpected and deeply comforting. For the first time in a long while, Clara felt her breath come easy, her mind clear and focused on the task at hand, rather than on worries about what might go wrong. 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity and planning, each day bringing the spring fair closer. Clara had been assigned to help with the decorations committee, a responsibility that made her both proud and nervous. The committee meetings were held in the art room after school, where the familiar scent of paint and clay helped calm her racing thoughts as they discussed color schemes and themes. The fair would be held in the school's spacious courtyard, where ancient oak trees provided dappled shade from the warm spring sun. In Clara's imagination, she could already see the transformation, twinkling lights hanging from branches like captured stars, colorful booths offering games and treats, the air filled with the mingled scents of popcorn and cotton candy. Her fingers tingled with anticipation as she sketched her ideas. "Clara, would you mind taking these supply boxes to the storage room?" Miss Rodriguez asked one afternoon, gesturing to a stack of heavy-looking cardboard containers. The weight of responsibility settled on Clara's shoulders like a comfortable shawl as she nodded, determination flickering in her eyes like a gentle flame. She could do this simple task without incident, she told herself. The boxes were heavier than they looked, their contents shifting slightly as Clara carefully lifted them, feeling the rough cardboard against her palms. The hallway was quiet, most students having left for the day, and Clara's footsteps echoed softly against the linoleum floor. The gentle weight in her arms made her feel purposeful, useful in a way she rarely experienced. It happened in an instant, a momentary lapse in concentration, a shoelace that had come undone, a slight stumble that sent Clara tumbling forward. Time seemed to slow as the boxes flew from her arms, their contents spilling across the floor in a cascade of colored paper, glue bottles, and paint containers. The sound of plastic hitting the floor echoed in the empty hallway like thunder. Horror washed over Clara as she realized one of the paint containers had burst open, sending a river of bright blue acrylic across the floor. The vibrant color spread like a small ocean, seeping into the cracks between tiles, staining everything it touched. The once pristine hallway now looked like an abstract painting, with splashes of color against the institutional beige floor. The accident was worse than any of her previous mishaps, the evidence of her failure impossible to hide or quickly clean up. Clara's heart pounded in her chest like a drum as she heard footsteps approaching, the sound growing louder with each beat. She closed her eyes, feeling the cool floor beneath her palms, the faint scent of chemicals from the spilled paint making her head swim. What happened here? Principal Stevens' voice cut through the silence like a knife. His normally kind face was creased with concern as he surveyed the damage, the overhead lights reflecting off his glasses. The weight of disappointment was familiar to Clara, settling over her like a heavy blanket as she struggled to find her voice. The news spread through the school like wildfire the next day. The hallway floor was permanently stained despite the janitor's best efforts, and the paint had damaged several boxes of irreplaceable decorations. Whispers followed Clara through the hallways, the soft sounds of gossip like leaves rustling in the wind. "I told you she'd mess it up," someone said, not quite quietly enough. The fair committee met in emergency session after school, the atmosphere tense and heavy like the air before a storm. Clara sat in the back corner of the room, her shoulders hunched, feeling the weight of every glance in her direction. The usual comforting sense of the classroom seemed muted, overpowered by the heaviness of disappointment that hung in the air. "We're going to have to scale back significantly," Ms. Rodriguez announced, her voice tinged with resignation. like the fading notes of a sad song. The budget won't cover replacement decorations, and we've lost too much time. Clara watched as faces fell around the room, the collective sigh of disappointment making her chest tighten with guilt. As the meeting broke up, Clara remained in her seat, the cool plastic chair supporting her as her thoughts swirled like autumn leaves caught in a gentle breeze. The classroom emptied, leaving her alone with the soft ticking of the clock and the distant sounds of the school settling into evening quiet. The golden light of late afternoon streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the empty desks. That night, Clara couldn't sleep, her mind too full of thoughts that tumbled over each other like waves on a shore. She lay awake, listening to the gentle rhythm of rain against her window, feeling the soft weight of her blanket providing comfort as she pondered her situation. The familiar sounds of her home at night, the occasional creak of settling wood, the soft whir of the refrigerator, the distant hoot of an owl, grounded her as she thought. As the first rays of dawn painted Clara's room in soft hues of pink and gold, an idea began to form in her mind, unfurling slowly like a flower opening to the morning sun. The gentle warmth of inspiration spread through her body as she sat up in bed, her heart beating with renewed purpose. She reached for her sketchbook, the familiar texture of the paper beneath her fingertips a comfort as she began to draw. Clara spent the weekend in a flurry of activity, but unlike her usual chaos, this was focused and intentional. Her room became a workshop, the air filled with the pleasant scents of paper, glue, and the herbal tea her mother had brought her. The soft sounds of scissors cutting through paper and the gentle scritch-scratch of colored pencils formed a soothing melody that carried her through the hours. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze that seemed to whisper encouragement as Clara made her way to school, her backpack heavier than usual. The weight of her project pressed against her spine, a constant reminder of her purpose. The cool morning air filled her lungs, refreshing her mind and steadying her resolve as she approached the school building. "Ms. Rodriguez, could I speak with you for a moment?" Clara asked, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. The teacher looked up from her desk, surprise registering on her face at Clara's unusual confidence. The morning light streaming through the classroom windows created a warm glow that felt like a good omen to Clara as she unzipped her backpack. Clara spread her designs across the desk, unveiling her vision for a completely reimagined spring fair. Instead of the traditional decorations they had lost, she proposed an upcycled dreamland theme, using recovered and repurposed materials to create magical, whimsical decorations. The blue-stained hallway floor would become the centerpiece, a river of dreams flowing through the school to guide visitors. "These are remarkable," Ms. Rodriguez said, her voice soft with wonder as she examined Clara's sketches. The genuine amazement in her teacher's eyes was like a warm embrace, filling Clara with a gentle confidence she had rarely experienced. The sound of the teacher's admiring sighs was sweeter than any music Clara had ever heard. Word of Clara's plan spread quickly, creating a buzz of renewed excitement that hummed through the school like electricity. Students who had never spoken to her before sought her out, offering help and materials. The weight of their support felt like sunshine on her skin, warm, nourishing, and full of promise. Clara's usual nervous energy transformed into productive enthusiasm. The weeks leading up to the fair were filled with collaborative creation, the art room becoming a hub of activity from morning until evening. The air was perfumed with the mingled scents of paint, paper, and shared purpose, creating an atmosphere of joyful industry. The sound of laughter and excited conversation provided a constant backdrop as Clara guided her newfound team. When the day of the spring fair finally arrived, Meadowbrook High School had been transformed into an enchanted landscape beyond anyone's expectations. The infamous blue paint stain had become the starting point for a meandering painted river that wound through the hallways, guiding visitors to different attractions. Small paper boats carrying tea lights floated in blue fabric pools at various intersections. The courtyard was a wonderland of upcycled beauty, with chandeliers made from painted plastic bottles catching and reflecting the sunlight in rainbow patterns across the grounds. Old textbooks had been folded into sculptural flowers, their pages creating delicate petals that rustled gently in the spring breeze. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the aroma of fair treats, creating an intoxicating perfume. "Clara, this is the most beautiful the fair has ever been," Principal Stevens said, his voice warm with pride as he surveyed the transformation. The weight of his hand on her shoulder felt like an anchor, grounding her in the moment of triumph. The gentle murmur of amazed visitors created a soothing background as Clara took in her accomplishment. As the day progressed, Clara found herself surrounded by friends both old and new, their presence a comfortable warmth that filled her with contentment. The dappled sunlight through the oak leaves created ever-changing patterns on the ground as they moved from booth to booth, the soft earth beneath their feet and the gentle touch of the breeze against their skin, connecting them to the perfect spring day. That evening, as twilight painted the sky in watercolor shades of purple and pink, the fairy lights strung through the trees created a magical glow that reflected in the eyes of everyone present. The sound of a local band playing soft melodies floated through the air like a lullaby. Clara sat on a bench beneath the oldest oak tree, taking in the scene with a sense of peace that settled over her like a soft blanket. "You did this, Clara," her mother said, sitting beside her on the bench, the familiar scent of her perfume bringing comfort. "You turned a disaster into something beautiful." The warmth of her mother's pride washed over Clara like gentle waves, soothing away the memories of past disappointments. The cool evening air carried the sound of crickets beginning their nightly chorus, a perfect accompaniment to the moment. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky like distant lanterns, Clara felt gratitude expanding in her chest, warm and radiant like the lights surrounding her. The knowledge that her supposed flaws, her different way of seeing the world, her tendency to create momentary chaos, had ultimately led to this beautiful creation filled her with a joy so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Clara had discovered something precious, that being different wasn't a flaw to overcome, but a gift to cherish. The very qualities that had once made her feel like an outsider had become her greatest strength. As she closed her eyes, breathing in the sweet night air filled with the scent of grass and distant cotton candy, Clara felt a perfect sense of belonging wash over her like gentle rain, cleansing away all doubt and leaving only peace in its wake.